And back in the 1950s, radio astronomers speculated that if an alien civilization wanted to communicate with us.
Brian Cox knows a lot about aliens, and now he's finally revealed the truth about them. The world of science comes with several analyses, studies, and observations about advanced civilizations, but little is told to the public. However, there are some scientists and physicists who do their own personal research and then tell the world about them, one of which is Brian Cox.
So aliens, we talk scientifically about aliens, so we're looking for aliens on the surface of Mars now.
The English physicist has recently divulged some information about aliens that have been hidden from us for a long time, and this might be the biggest news yet about extraterrestrials. What information about aliens did Brian Cox talk about? Would this be the beginning of our discovering of a new civilization? Join us as we explore how Brian Cox finally breaks the silence on aliens. We've heard about aliens for decades now, with the possibility of them being real and coming into our world to probably dominate us, just like Stephen Hawking warned. This is one topic that still remains largely discussed among scientists, physicists, and even astronomers. Although agencies like the National Aeronautics and Space Administration have always noted and specified to the world that there are no aliens, scientists, astronomers, and physicists are always ready to prove otherwise. This is why a lot of research is being conducted, and Brian Cox is one of the first people to make a huge discovery about this phenomenon called aliens. Brian Cox has started to talk to the world and to educate us about the sheer possibility of aliens in our universe and how they are even living among us. One of the first times he talked about this possibility was in a podcast with Joe Rogan, who is also largely known to talk about aliens. During the podcast interview, Joe Rogan talked to Brian Cox and asked him about his thoughts on alien life outside our planet. Brian, on the other hand, revealed to us some hints we never gave much thought to. His response showed that he knew a lot about advanced civilizations, but was only beginning to give us the information step by step. Brian said,
"Is this something you think about?"
Yeah, I think there must be. Even in the solar system, I would not be surprised if we find microbes on Mars or on some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn where there's liquid water.
Like Europa.
Yeah.
For a physicist like Brian Cox to begin talking about alien life in space and even giving suggestions like discovering microbes on other planets for a start without having to ponder about it, then it's clear that such a scientist knows more and was giving us hints about aliens and their existence, but sadly we didn't give it much thought. We should have known, though, with the rate at which physicists and astronomers were coming together to find clues, that this would lead them to the discovery of extraterrestrials. Brian Cox and his other teams of scientists are researching the data obtained from telescopes that scanned outer space in search of signals and signs of civilizations outside our planet.
There are telescopes searching the skies for signals, for hints, for a sign of civilizations, or even the signals from starships moving through the sky.
This scan carried out with telescopes is what led Brian Cox and his team of scientists and astronomers to discover a very unique but weird signal which Brian and his team knew could not come from anywhere else but an advanced civilization. This signal was detected around the vicinity of the constellation Sagittarius, and that signal was so peculiar to the team of scientists. This signal was something that scientists and astronomers had not seen before, and getting such a signal from outside space was nothing but mind-blowing to all who were aware of the discovery at the time. The exact thing that mesmerized Brian and his team was the fact that they knew that this strange signal detected by the telescope was found on a wavelength that the entire team of scientists was assured that only an intelligent civilization might choose to use for transmission. When the wavelength was analyzed, it was discovered to be 21 centimeters. This is also the wavelength of light, which is also possible for radio waves that are emitted from hydrogen atoms. But now that we begin to hear stories about radio waves in space, what comes to your mind if not aliens? That was the same thing the team of scientists and astronomers thought as well. Basically, the entire sky glows at the wavelength, and even experts and radio astronomers have talked about these wavelengths from way back in the 1950s. These radio astronomers, who at the time weren't certain about the existence of aliens but were aware of such phenomena, have talked about what might happen if they discover Earth. They noted that if aliens discovered Earth, they would like to communicate with us. Since they might not know what exists on Earth, a transmission would be the best idea for them to send to our planet. And when they want to transmit such radio waves to Earth, there is a high chance, if not at all sure, that the alien civilization would pick this remarkable wavelength. And this same wavelength that radio astronomers talked about in the 1950s in case an alien civilization decides to say hi was the exact wavelength recently discovered by Brian. But what is more shocking, and also gave Brian Cox the confirmation he needs to talk about his experience during the detection and analysis of this signal, is that the wave was not either local, military signal, or even the satellite. Also, it is more of a law that no one is allowed to transmit the hydrogen line frequency because it was specially reserved for radio astronomy only. So if there was nobody else on this hydrogen line frequency, who sent the piercing transmission? That is one mystery Brian Cox never knew he would keep exploring till today. After the signal was detected, other teams of scientists alongside Brian Cox have been studying and researching the area for more insights about this signal, but they've got nothing in response.
Since the WOW signal, we've heard nothing. We've searched in more detail, with better telescopes, more systematically. By no means exhaustively, by the way. I think we could do much more. But we've searched and we've heard nothing.
The team of scientists were shocked at this development, but at the same time, other theories about why the signal was no longer detected came into light. One of these theories was brought forth by Brian Cox, and judging from what he said, no further explanation needs to be done before one is convinced that aliens are truly existing. Do you know why? Because Brian Cox theorized that aliens and extraterrestrials look and complexion-wise would probably have a color of purple slime, which has been widely agreed on by scientists for many years. The TV scientists propose that life in the universe is likely abundant. Intelligent life, however, is another matter. In his 2015 book, Human Universe, which was written alongside Andrew Cohen, Cox wrote that there is a sense of chemical inevitability to life in the universe. But he adds that complex life on Earth only arose after the emergence of eukaryotes, cells containing organelles. Research suggests eukaryotes developed as a result of one primitive cell called a prokaryote, like a bacterium, absorbing another 2 billion years ago. Mitochondria and chloroplasts are descendants of independent prokaryotes that entered symbiotic relationships with the larger cells. The advent of eukaryotes on Earth was a vanishingly unlikely development. Cox calls it an evolutionary bottleneck and thinks it's so unusual that it might have happened only once in the universe. One can easily imagine that the 20 billion Earth-like worlds in the Milky Way could all be covered in prokaryotic slime. He wrote, "A living galaxy, yes, but a galaxy filled with intelligence? I'm not so sure." And although Professor Brian Cox's theory suggested that aliens really could exist, his theory also noted that they might not be in our galaxy. The TV scientist was asked about United States Congressman Andre Carson's comments which addressed UFOs. The US Congressman stated that UFOs are potential national security threats that are real and need to be investigated, while Professor Cox, on the other hand, suggested intelligent beings could be out there. However, he stated that civilizations like ours would be extremely rare, perhaps on average 1 per galaxy. He said in a statement that there are 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. I'm sure there are others out there. And it looks like we have good evidence that life was present 3.8 billion years ago, and the first civilization to appear on Earth was about now. So it took the best part of 4 billion years to go from the origin of life on Earth to a civilization. That's a third of the age of the universe, and that is a long time, so that may indicate that microbes may be common, but things like us may be extremely rare. The TV scientist also said while microbes on other planets may well be common, civilizations are much rarer. He said, "If you force me to guess, I would say there may be microbes all over the place. That's why we're looking for life on Mars, for example. But in terms of intelligence, one thing to think about is the origin of life on Earth." If humans inhabit the only world in a galaxy of 400 billion suns, that gives us responsibility in terms of climate change, Professor Cox added. Monica Grady, a professor of planetary and space sciences, also commented where she said, "Our galaxy is so vast, with so many different types of stars with planets orbiting them, it is statistically possible for life to have arisen on another planet. We know that there is no civilization apart from ours in the solar system, so any life that has evolved to develop interstellar travel would have to travel across billions of miles. This would take thousands of years, almost certainly longer than the 200,000 or so years since modern humans developed. I would hope that any life form that had evolved to such an advanced stage would realize that peace, truth, justice, and integrity would be a far better template for civilization than war, terror, injustice, and falsehood. We can't even see most of the universe, but one thing we know and we're sure of is that the star count is already so big that there are too many to wrap your head around. We have discovered that there are 2 trillion galaxies in the piece of the universe we can see. That's a fact, says Professor Brian Cox, who always keeps us abreast of facts like these. 2 trillion, each one, give or take the size of the Milky Way, so let's say 100 billion, maybe a trillion stars in each one. It makes Earth seem very small indeed. And this is all some of the stuff of the good Mancunian professor's spectacular new series, Universe, which deals with how stars came into being, the latest discoveries about black holes, and the fact that there are planets out there that are like styrofoam. It is about what a space probe that goes into the sun's atmosphere discovers and what information is being gleaned from Hubble. We know, for example, that the universe was formed 13.8 billion years ago. It had a beginning. And in 10 trillion years it will have an end. The last star will be a red dwarf, a relatively small, dim star that will simply fade away, leaving a void. You can't help but feel insignificant squaring off against so much time and space. Our own lifespan's about 80 years if we live in fortunate circumstances, seems so paltry by comparison. But as always with Brian Cox, it's all about how you look at things. Ultimately, the series is about trying to encourage the audience to think about the meaning of those discoveries. He says, "You won't find meaning through the eyepiece of a telescope, but you are forced, when you see these things, to ask questions. What does it mean? What is my place?" And it's an ancient question, isn't it? What does it mean to be me? Astronomy challenges our sense of ourselves, certainly. We are a long way from the anthropocentrism of our relatively recent belief that we lived on a flat Earth with the stars ranging prettily above us. Science went on to tell us that we lived on a globe and that this globe was not even the center of the solar system, that a burning star was at the center of things. And now we know that even our galaxy is only a bit player in the ever-expanding universe. Yes, science has been a continual series of demotions, says Cox cheerfully. From the center of the universe to what we are now, and we are still being demoted, because every other year, the conceptual universe seems to get bigger. At the same time, he says the fact that we can recognize this, even be upset about it, shows how significant we actually are. I would love to see the Earth from space. I think that's going to be quite transforming when many people get the opportunity to do that. I argue, I think it's self-evidently correct that human beings are in a fundamental sense the way that the universe understands itself, says Cox. We are a collection of atoms, as we say in the series, that were assembled in stars, and yet we're able to think and explore the universe. We can't presume that there is life anywhere else, let alone some kind of civilization. There may be, but the confluence of conditions needed to create life seems so random, it is astonishing it happened at all, which makes us valuable, possibly uniquely so, and confers a huge responsibility because if we are the sole repository of conscious knowledge, if nothing else knows that black holes exist, given the black holes themselves don't know anything, then that means we are not only, as Genesis would have it, the stewards of life on Earth, we're also the recording angels of the universe. However, we might actually have to rethink if advanced civilization would truly be able to reach out to us. It's brutal, agrees Cox. I think I say that in the series. If we destroy ourselves, and we nearly did that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we've had a go and nuclear war is not off the table, we might eliminate meaning in the galaxy, that knowledge might reside nowhere else but here, so there's a perspective. What if some idiot just presses the button? What we all need, perhaps, is a wider perspective. The current appetite for space travel among billionaires is met with a lot of eye-rolling or anger, but you won't get that sort of skepticism from Cox. I would love to see the Earth from space, he admits, and I think that's going to be quite transforming when many people get the opportunity to do that. Because I've been lucky enough to have met many astronauts, and I think I can say with certainty that all of them speak of the power of seeing the Earth from space. They don't think in terms of conquering the universe or mastering nature. They speak of its fragility. They all seem to be humbled by the experience. I think when it becomes routine and when more people get up there, it will have a valuable impact on our culture. Because I'm sure that those astronauts, many of them having been test pilots, are not given to whimsical reflection. Again, it's not so much about knowing what's up there, crucial though that is, as about how we think about it. That's why science matters. It's not knowing the facts really, says Cox. I mean, someone has to know the facts. Someone has to be able to do these things, build phones, invent vaccines, those sort of things. But ultimately, we all play a role in ensuring that our civilization extends and prospers and stays here. And if we lose the shared idea of facts, right, if we shy away from the implications of our discoveries, we run the risk of going backward, essentially into the Dark Ages. So we have to keep thinking, he says, we owe it to the universe. And somewhere under there is my conviction that thinking in the way nature forces you to think is a valuable intellectual exercise, irrespective of what you are thinking about, says Cox. Scientific thinking isn't comfortable, that's the challenge. And some people don't like being challenged, but I think that's the point, isn't it? We need to get to a point where everybody enjoys being challenged, a utopia. That would be my utopian vision, a world where everyone actually enjoys being challenged. Brian is one that actually enjoys being challenged, and his new research has led his previous theories about aliens sending messages to us to become challenged. The English physicist Brian Cox noted that we won't be contacting intelligent extraterrestrials, nor would we hear from them anytime soon, or perhaps not ever. It may be that the growth of science and engineering inevitably outstrips the development of political expertise, leading to disaster, says Cox. He believes that intelligent extraterrestrial life may have unwittingly rendered itself extinct. Intelligent life destroys itself as soon as it becomes advanced, the physicist believes. We could be approaching that position. This comment comes as no surprise, especially since Cox believes that politicians should start thinking more like scientists, using proof as much as an ideology to redraw their views. The vastness of space and the possibilities it holds are the very heart of the Fermi paradox, a 1950s theory named after physicist Enrico Fermi. Enrico Fermi is the one who famously pointed out how, despite strong potential for extraterrestrial life, there is an equally strong lack of evidence showing that it exists. If alien life is out there, why haven't they contacted us yet? One solution to the Fermi paradox is that it is not possible to run a world that has the power to destroy itself and that needs global collaborative solutions to prevent that, Cox explains. And while this explanation makes a lot of sense, there's still a chance we might encounter extraterrestrial life, albeit not in intelligent forms. The best chances we have right now may be in bacterial or microbial life forms. With the rise of ocean worlds inside and beyond our solar system, we may soon discover single-celled organisms hiding in these planets, such as Saturn's moon Dione and our next galaxy neighbor, Proxima b. Now, Brian Cox's ideas and theories bring us to a crossroads. Do you think Brian Cox knows something about aliens, but he's trying to hide it with his recent information about aliens not being able to ever reach us? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.